Hi, my name is Michael Horn. I'm representing here today my client, John Ortega, who is being accused by the prosecutor attorney of polygamy. But I'm not going to say what he said is true or not true, and I'm not going to incriminate my client to the accused accusation. But what I will say here today is I could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that even if he was, it was in his constitutional rights. Because to prove my case today, I had subpoenaed an English professor to testify as an expert witness for professional opinion of incriminating idea and compare it to the 9th Amendment, number 3, right to marry and start a family. I also will provide physical evidence that people with ADHD in males are more common to be hyperactive than women with the same disorder. And so, according to the American with Disability Act, they are supposed to work around that disability because ADHD falls under that category. I also going to be providing physical evidence since the beginning of the 1900s. Mormons, in particular, the Latter-day Saints Church, been practicing polygamy as a spiritual thing, and according to then I will compare it to the right to religion, our First Amendment right, because Mormon is a religion. So, and with these type of evidence combined with my witness combined, I hope you guys find my client not guilty. In fact, it was in violation of his constitutional rights. Also, furthermore, I will also provide that human rights, that because what happens in our home, what happens between two or more people, is our private life, and the government has no authority to interfere with our private lives, and being married is part of that. So it becomes violation of privacy when it comes to the no polygamy law or the no polygamy law. And since you all hear my opening statement, and after you hear all my witnesses and looked at all my evidence, I hope you find that my case is so solid, and find that my client not guilty of polygamy. In fact, the government actually violated his human right to privacy, violation of American with Disability Act, violation of religion, and violation of the 9th Amendment, number 3, right to marry and start a family. Because a person can't help who they fall in love with. And if the man, it's okay for the woman to marry another woman or another man, and stuff, the government shouldn't stop them. Also, if a woman feels like she wants to fall in love with the woman or multiple women and another man, the government has no right to stop them because it's still private lives. And we have a right to privacy under the one of the Fifth Amendment's rights. And so I hope you guys take look after you all look at my case, look at all my evidence, hear my witness. You will actually take my side and my client's side that the government did violate his constitutional rights, and he should be found not guilty of violating the law because it was in his human rights and constitutional rights to do so. Now I will call my witness, Professor Tom Hakayana. Professor Tom Hakayana, what is your profession? My profession is an English professor. Where are you teaching English at? At Cal State University. In your own professional opinion, what's your definition of incriminating idea? The idea is not clearly stated by the author. Now, look at the 9th Amendment and read it to the courts. Right to marry and start a family. Professor, did The author of the Bill of Rights, Ninth Amendment, number 3, clearly stated how many a person could marry? No. How do you know it's not clearly stated by the author of the Bill of Rights? Because the clearly stated number would state right to marry one person and start a family, right to marry two person and start a family, right to marry three person and start a family, and so on. And because the number is not clearly stated, it would be considered an implied number, because the author did not clearly state a number in the right to marry and start a family. So, in your own professional opinion, would you consider that a violation of the Ninth Amendment, number 3, since the author did not clearly state the number? So, would you consider the no polygamy law being in violation of that? Yes. The government will be in violation of the Ninth Amendment, number 3, right and start family. Thank you. I don't have no more questions, Your Honor. Professor, you could step down from the witness box. Now I provide, according to the right to religion, how Mormons been practicing polygamy since the early 1900s. Call this evidence 1 and evidence 2, right to religion, and the evidence that actually will prove that Mormons been practicing polygamy for an extremely long time as part of their religious ceremony. Now I provide that people with ADHD and males are more prone to be hyperactive than the women who have the same disorder. Call this Exhibit 3, which will prove that males who have ADHD are more hyper than women, or more than girls with the same disorder. Because marriage is about the heart, and we can't help what our heart wants. If our heart wants 2, 3, even 4 wives, or 4 wives and 4 husbands, we can't help that. And government is trying to tell us we can't go with our hearts. It's just illogical. Because the heart will want what it wants. And the government can't put a stop to that. Because heart is actually a feeling. And we can't put a stop to our feelings. So and that's another reason why the government can't put a stop to it. It's like telling them, you can't have your wife, or you can't have your husband, when your heart actually loves them. What gives them in their own right to do that same thing to us? When the police officer took that badge, the politician took that bench, the judge took his or her bench, they took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and other civil rights laws. And the American with Disability Act is a civil rights law. It's actually a law that protects the disability rights, and people with ADHD is considered a disability. And it also stated in the American with Disability Act, one needs to work around a person's disability, because ADHD is a disability, and males with hyperactive ADHD who are hyper would be too their hyperactivity would be too overwhelming for that woman who actually has the same disorder but yet not hyper, more mellow and calm. And it would be too stressful, which leads to their divorce. So American with Disability Act was put in place to work around that negative symptoms of ADHD. And federal laws will always override state law. And American with Disability Act is a federal act that protects the rights of all persons with disability, including ADHD. And so when the government create and enforce a law that contradicts it, you're violating disabled rights. And as a cross-disability rights advocate, I will not tolerate it. And that's why I'm representing my client here today to teach the government they can't abuse their power. They can't create a law that violates and contradicts the disabled rights. And not just that, when they took office, they took an oath to uphold the United States Constitution. And the 14th Amendment, Section 1 states, no state should infringe on someone else's rights, and no state should enforce on someone else's rights. So when they create a law and enforce a law that contradicts our constitutional rights, they are violating a federal law. And so it means you violate the oath you took. You lie to your people, who you're supposed to protect. How can we trust cops, judges, attorneys, politicians who constantly creating laws and violating the Constitution? We can't. How do we know they're not going to create and enforce a constitutional law the next time after they already proven to us in countless times they violate the constitutional rights of their citizens? We don't. That's why they need to be held accountable to that action. That's why it's so important to know, understand, and cite by memory the whole 27th Amendment of the Constitution of the USA and other civil rights laws, because the police officers, judges, attorneys, security guards, business owners, they will constantly create and enforce our constitutional laws if they can't cite by memory. Because knowing where to find the civil rights laws in the Constitution is one thing, but things happen. Like for politicians, they have to be on their toes, and if they can't cite by memory the Constitution of the United States like I can, they could create, and when it comes to cops, they could enforce a unconstitutional law without even knowing it. For another thing, because if we can't, it takes time to look through all the civil rights laws and find a law that these laws that they want to make or enforce is not in violation. But if we could be on your toes and cite by memory the whole Constitution inside and out and other civil rights laws like I can, that is a way they could be on their toes where they actually won't even take that chance of creating these unconstitutional laws, because we have to do things quick, especially when it comes to a politician and even a police officer. And if you can't cite the Constitution like I can, by memory, word by word, amendment by amendment, section by section, you might accidentally create a constitutional law. You might accidentally enforce a constitutional law without even knowing it. And that's really civil rights law too. Violations of crimes. And so you have to be on your toes. And because that's the only reason why judges, cops, law enforcement, politicians, attorneys, business owners, and their employees constantly create and enforce a constitutional law, because they can't cite by memory the whole Constitution and other civil rights laws like I can. So that's why it's so important for judges, cops, law enforcement, politicians, business owners, security guards, and their employees to actually know what the Constitution actually says and other civil rights laws, so they could actually make sure they don't enforce one of these unconstitutional laws. So, and since the Massachusetts Bay Colony, United States, and its history were based off of two principles. They are freedom, which the Bill of Rights and other civil rights guarantees, and immigration, because since the Massachusetts Bay Colony, immigrants come to the United States to improve their life and better their life for their self and their family. And I'm going to be using reverse psychology. How can you take that away from their family if you won't take that away from your own family? How can we trust cops, trust judges, trust attorneys, trust politicians if they're constantly creating and enforcing unconstitutional law after they swore they won't? we can't. That's why they need someone like me, someone who could cite the whole Constitution as the next civil rights attorney, next constitutional law attorney, next legal, medical, psychological malpractice attorney, next future federal judge, and the next president of the United States, so I could put into these unconstitutional laws once and for all. And after you hear my opening remarks, after you hear all my witnesses and look at all my evidence, and after you hear my closing remarks, I hope you find in your hearts to find my client not guilty of the charges that he's being accused of in this court today.